want an expedient answer, and if we want the right answer, then let's really document and show what's here. Let's try and make it so they don't need to make a trip out here. Not just ask a question of here's a problem, what do we do? But here's a problem, and here's a potential solution that would work. Arizona's a little bit different, not drastically different, but a little bit, from a climate standpoint, it's hot here, but there's really no natural disasters to speak of. And so you go into some areas, like you go to the West Coast and it's a seismic zone. So there's a big earthquake risk. That's different. You go to the West Coast, Florida, places like that, there's hurricane risk. We don't have any of that here. Our big issues are heat. So, that's the apparent one, the obvious one to me. There's not really a lot of climate issues. We do deal with different subterranean issues. So our ground's a little bit different than some places. We have a lot of clay here. We have a lot of expansive soils in different parts of the city. We also have a lot of caliche and stuff like that, hard ground to deal with. So I guess, codes kind of dictate that to a point, what we have to build to. Another thing is there's no snow load that we deal with on roofs. I would say from maybe a climate thing that I've experienced, because I've worked in Washington State, Montana, and Arizona. And, in Washington State and Montana, your schedule, a lot of times, your start time and stop time is dictated by daylight hours. So for instance, in the wintertime in Washington State, it's dark. You're farther from the equator, so it's darker more of the day than it is as you get closer to the equator. And so your start time is largely dictated by when you have daylight. You can bring in light farms and stuff like that. But here, like specifically in the summertime, in Arizona state law is construction can start at 5 a.m. period. It's from May to October. It's now allowed to start at 5 a.m. in any city, anywhere, regardless of what somebody tries to say, and it's for worker safety. And if you're pouring concrete, you can start at 4 a.m. That wasn't the case that long ago here, and that's not the case in a lot of parts of the country, because you don't have workers dealing with 110 degree heat by 1 o'clock in the afternoon or noon in July and August. And so that's why they did that, to protect workers. And so that's a difference. Aside from climate and code, Arizona's not, compared to Washington anyway, Arizona's not a strong union presence. And so the way the trades operate and the unions is definitely different. There's pros and cons. There's times when I definitely wish we had a good union here. It gives us a good, consistent workforce. And we do have some, but they're fewer and farther between in Arizona. There's lots that I can name firsthand, but we rely on them. We rely on them, not entirely, but a ton. Without our trade partners, we could not be successful, and without good design partners, projects would not be successful. I think because us and our team is so focused on relationships and trying to do best for everyone, best for the project, which is generally best for everyone on the project also, we really lean into those relationships. We really, we make sure that we're thinking about scheduling things in the right way so that everybody can be productive and have as much space and as much opportunity when they come in as they can, and they can be efficient and get in and out. And then with architects, and design teams, they have a really tough job. They're conceptualizing a project before it even begins, and they're trying to think of details, and they're trying to draw and capture existing conditions. That's really tough to do. And I've had peers in the past and worked alongside people in the past that, when something comes up, it's just someone else's problem. And the thing is, and I try and explain and try and tell people, and it's the way we operate is, here's an issue, no one's seen it before, especially an existing condition or a concealed condition that we uncover, is no one's seen this. And so if we want an expedient answer, and if we want the right answer, then let's really document and show what's here. Let's try and make it so they don't need to make a trip out here, and not just ask a question of here's a problem, what do we do? But here's a problem, and here's a potential solution that would work, that we've looked into. So sometimes it takes another day or another hour to get an RFI, a request for information, out to a design team. But I think overall it accelerates the process, and that start to end, from problem discovered to solution implemented. And so that's something that we try and do. It's self-serving to a point, for sure, because we want to move as quickly as we can, but we also know that if we don't do that, the architect or the designer or the engineer is going to need to make a trip to the job site. They're going to need to schedule that, and it's going to delay things, and it's going to cost them money that they don't need to spend. And so I think and I hope that in doing some of those things, we become kind of the preferred contractor for some of these designers. And then I think when owners realize that, they also see the value in having us on board versus somebody else. Okay, I'm going to kind of bash the industry a little bit. Not a ton, but so something an owner should know is, if it's anything but a first generation space, meaning so that would be a tenant improvement. A renovation is generally not a first generation. It's been built out and finished to the point of use, and it's getting repurposed or redesigned to something else or an update. And in that case, there's always existing conditions. So those would be things behind the walls, behind the ceilings, behind the floors, or behind the concrete, under the concrete, that you don't know about, that are potentially impactful to what you intend to do. So you need to be prepared as an owner to potentially adapt what you want to fit around a condition that you cannot change, or is too costly to change. So you need to be prepared to balance, like, do I want to move this plumbing stack, which you should for the most part know about, but do I want to move this existing component to continue with the design I wanted, or do I want to change the design to fit around this existing component? A good example of that is a few years ago I worked on a 911 call center that we converted I think it was U-Haul, but anyways, it was a self-storage facility to a 911 call center. And it was like self-storage, and then it was an office space. And so it had been converted once, but then we converted it to a 911 call center. And the thing that's with 911 call centers is they're built to a different level. Like in the case of a emergency or a disaster, like it has to be one of the last structures functioning and standing. And so there's redundancy, there's reinforcement, there's different things that go into those. And when you're dealing with an existing condition in a renovation like that was, and they were wanting to have on the floor where they had the workstations, they wanted to have clear line of sight and didn't want to deal with columns and things like that. It was not possible to avoid those. And so, it's kind of an iterative thing. and it was playing with layouts and changing where people sit and where a supervisor sits, so they could make this space work. So that's the type of thing that a client should be prepared for, or one of the things that a client should be prepared for. And then where I'm going to kind of bash the industry a little bit is your contractor should be on top of the schedule. They should be on top of communication. You should not be chasing them down for information. It happens too often, and it's really with inexperienced owners that maybe this is their first build or their second build, and they just really don't know what to expect. But you should have a schedule from your contractor, and you should be getting regular updates, and you should be getting daily reports and photos and documents, and you shouldn't have to be chasing them for silly things like what's going on and when is this starting and when is this going to be done. And there's some facet of it that's kind of evolving along the way, but they should be updating you, and a lot of times companies don't, and it's not good for anybody. It's not, we do schedules as much for the owner's desire to have one, or the architect's desire to have one, as we do for ourselves. It is a tool. It's not something that we have to do, and I think some of our competitors at times look at schedules as something that they just have to do to satisfy a contractual requirement, instead of using it as a tool to help themselves and help their trade partners be efficient on the job. I don't think we could build a job without a schedule effectively and efficiently. It'd cost us money. There's a couple ways that we can help with that. Some of this goes back to my time when I worked as an owner's rep. And so when a client is starting a project, or an owner starting a project, they should always have a contingency that they keep on their side. Always. So there's going to be stuff that comes up. There's stuff along the way. One of the things that we do a little bit different, and at times it hurts us, and in fact yesterday I was having a conversation with a potential client where our price was more expensive, and significantly more expensive, but it was really dialed down to just a few line items, and it was, what's this for? I know it's something, but your competitor doesn't have this. And it's like, well, you need to have an underwater or an underground rainwater storage tank. You don't have room for a detention pond, so you need to do a tank, and your design calls out a tank, but it doesn't specify a tank. And so we included an allowance for a tank that was appropriately sized, not knowing exactly what's going to be specified or where it's going to be placed on the site. And this is at a budgeting phase, but our competitors didn't have anything in it, and it's a significant cost. So stuff like that we're looking for, and I say it sometimes it hurts us because, at face value, if you just look at bottom line dollar, it looks like we're more expensive, but we're including things that they should be thinking about. Other things that were in that same estimate was, hey, we're gonna damage landscaping and damage hardscaping, and so here's a allowance to go restore this at the end. Well, if the other contractors don't include that, then the owner is going to be stuck with a budget overrun at the end of the job when they say, hey, this sidewalk is cracked and we need to replace it, or this landscaping's been destroyed and we need to restore it. Those are real things. Those are real costs that, unfortunately, in a competitive lump sum bid environment, if it's not explicitly called out in a drawing, a lot of people don't capture it. We try and look for those things because we really don't want a ton of huge surprises at the end of a project that are expensive for an owner. So those are some of the things that we do. But then again, with the way we ask questions, or RFIs, write RFIs on projects, if something comes up and we think, hey, here's a potential solution to this problem, we offer it. I personally don't like to write RFIs that don't have at least one potential solution that we could include. And part of the reason for that is there's solutions that seem apparent to us that are constructible and efficient, and that's what we're going to suggest. While we think so a solution that we think will meet the design intent and the required use, but being efficient and constructible is what we'll suggest. If you ask a question and somebody doesn't come out to look at the condition, they may design something or draw something that's less than efficient. It's going to take longer to get that answer, and both of those scenarios, if it's not efficient to construct or it takes longer to get the answer, both of those are expensive for an owner. There's a lot. So, back to another question we had. You should be getting a schedule. If you're not getting a schedule, there's not planning. Your contractor should be thinking about and showing you about a logistics plan, or at least if they have a concept for logistics. So where are fences going to go? Where's access? Where are we staging things? When are things coming? How long before we need them are they needed? Or do we need to have them on site? If it's things that we're doing submittals for, are submittals coming in time? One thing I'm a huge believer of, one thing I'm a huge believer in preparing a schedule is we need to do start to end on activities. And so we can't install something that's not on site, and we can't have something on site that's not been submitted on and approved. And we can't submit on and get approval on something that doesn't have a purchase order or a subcontract issued on. And we can't issue subcontracts or purchase orders until we have a contract and notice to proceed in place. And so a schedule really should have all of those things start to end, starting with prime contract to subcontractor purchase order and submittals and submittal review time and procurement time, delivery dates, and then finally installation of materials. And if they don't, you are setting yourself up to a point for failure, because you can put out there that we're going to install this air handler in 6 months or 12 months or 18 months from now, but if you don't have everything else in place, it's not going to show up. And I believe in tying them all together. It takes a little bit extra work on the front end and a little bit extra work in managing the schedule and updating it, but I really think that makes a big difference in showing that you're planned and prepared, and not showing but being properly prepared for a job. If you're not seeing stuff like that, that should be a red flag. If you are seeing a contractor that's not doing submittals in a timely fashion, or saying I need these back in tomorrow, they're not planning very well, or there's something else going on, and maybe it's time to have a conversation about it. So we use a program called Procore. Some love, some hate Procore. It's a pretty good project management tool. It's not perfect. Some people really struggle with it. There's things that I have issues with it. But what it does do is we can put ourselves on it. We put our owners on it, our design team on it, all of our trade partners on it. And if they're using it, we're getting regular schedule updates out to them. We're getting pictures every single day. Every single picture that we take on the job is shared with everybody. They're not private, they're not secrets. And so you don't have to come to the site every day to see what's been done. Schedule updates are a huge communication tool to keep everyone informed as to what's going on. That Procore is as well. And then, we like to have regular meetings. We like to walk through the job with people. We like to show them what's going on. We like to show them what's coming and talk about what's coming next. I like to ask clients how they like to be communicated with. Everyone's got a different communication style. Some people like email, some people like phone calls, some people like text messages, and some people like to just show up and be in person. And to me, what tool we use or what method we use to communicate is less important than making sure that we communicate in a way that works for everybody. And also understanding urgency of communications. So, everyone's got a different understanding. Some people look at text messages as super urgent and I want a response in 2 hours, and some people look at phone calls as only call me if it's at 911. And then other people look at phone calls as the normal course of business and the regular thing, and look at text messages as I'll get back to you when I can. And so understanding that, what people's expectations are and what their preferences are really makes a difference. If you were trying to communicate with me and all you were sending me was fax messages, it wouldn't work very well. I wouldn't know what you were trying to tell me. So that's kind of an extreme example because not many people use faxes anymore. But it's an important thing to think about. It's something we think about in a normal practice that we put in place. The advice I'd give somebody planning their next restaurant build out is let's get a really good responsibilities matrix together. There are architects and teams that do a really good job of doing that, but it's so important early on to know who's providing what, who it's coming from, when it's coming, and if you as the owner are providing certain pieces of equipment, kitchen equipment, cooking equipment, shelving, what have you, getting that information to your contractor, the submittal information, is super important. I want to and will check electrical drawings and plumbing drawings to make sure that the grills that you have ordered and the refrigeration units you have ordered and the sinks that you have coming work with the plumbing designed and the electrical designed. So there's amperage issues, there's voltage issues that come up, there's special plug-ins that are always, seems like those are always a question, is it hardwired or does it have some special plug and not just a conventional plug? And those are things that we want to look for. There's lots of things we want to look for, but those are the pretty obvious ones that come from those kitchen equipment and shelving and storage submittals if they're owner supplied. Certainly if the contractor's providing them, we're looking at that stuff too, or your contractor should be looking at them. Not everyone does. But that would be my probably first recommendation, is get a really good, clear responsibility matrix and make sure that you have that at or before time of bid so that everyone's aware and can plan accordingly. And then after that, getting a really good understanding from your contractor of when they want that equipment to show up and how they need it to show up, and also conveying to them if you have restrictions, like all of the equipment has to show up on one truck or two trucks instead of in a different order. So that's super important. Your contractor should be looking at what needs to go in first, what needs to go in last, because there's relationships and dependencies on when things need to happen. There's a lot of things out there. For a long time now, we've had the ability to use robots to a point to help with layout, survey equipment to help with layout. Gosh, we were doing that. I was doing that on projects like 8 years ago. Quite a long time, but it's still not fully adopted. I think, and I believe, construction's one of the slowest to adopt. I'm not sure of many industries that still build primarily off of two-dimensional drawings. For a large part, construction drawings are even drawn in 3 dimensions and then converted to 2 dimensions on paper and printed out or sent as a PDF file to a contractor. I hope someday that changes, but we are just a little bit slow. So we've been using robots and GPS survey equipment for quite a while. AI's becoming a part of things in different capacities. Not as much as other industries, I don't think. You see reports and videos of robots installing materials. Like there's one out there about a robot that does roofing and a robot that lays tile, and I personally haven't seen any of that. I'm sure it's out there. I'm sure it's really coming, but I haven't seen it in person yet. But probably one of the interesting things that I've dealt with personally over the last several years is laser scanning. And so you go into an existing space and you can laser scan and then import that into a model. And what's great about that is it shows you everything that's there. The laser scanning I've done in the past, it doesn't tell you what it is, but it shows you that something's there and you can see what it is, but you don't know if it's a steel beam or a piece of ductwork, or the model doesn't, the computer doesn't, so you have to tell it. But stuff like that's out there. What else is there? Drones have become commonplace on construction sites. Drones can do quantity surveys, so they can show you how much dirt you've moved. They can quantify how big a stockpile of dirt is instead of bringing a surveyor out and having them survey it and quantify it that way. There's drones that you can set now in pre-programmed flight paths, and so they'll fly up every single day and take the same flight path and take the same pictures to show progress pictures. Stuff like that's out and about. We're starting to see like exoskeleton suits from a couple manufacturers to help with worker fatigue and make them able to lift heavier things. Again, not something I've seen in practice, but I see videos of it and curious what it'll be like when I see one in person for the first time. But like I remember, gosh, it was probably 7 or 8 years ago where we started seeing HEPA vacuums attached to roto hammers to minimize silica dust that a worker who's rotor hammering a hole in concrete is exposed to. And that was like amazing at the time. And so I would say construction's pretty far behind a lot of industries, and I think the most obvious example of that is the 2D drawings versus how other industries build things. I think the biggest thing we do to manage quality control during fast-paced builds is a pain in the butt for a lot of people, but I call it continuous punch. I've never heard a term for it. I made that up. I'm sure someone said it before me, but I had never heard it. But what that means, or what's normal, is you get to the end of a project and you say, okay, architect and owner, we're going to walk through and we're going to put blue tape where we want something fixed and document what needs to be fixed, and then contractor's going to go in a certain period of time and fix those things and then turn it back over to us with those corrected. In a fast-paced build, I think that takes too much time. I've had a couple projects that we got to the end and there was zero punch list, zero deficiencies. But what we're doing along the way is us and our team are going through and we're flagging drywall defects before we paint. And that doesn't seem like a big deal. But what happens a lot of times in fast-paced builds is the drywaller will come through and tape and finish and do everything, and the painter comes in and paints. And then at the very end, when everything's painted and cleaned, nearly done cleaning and ready to turn over, the architect or the owner comes through and says, hey, fix this dent in the wall. And it doesn't seem like a big deal, but if you're fixing a dent in the wall and then you're repainting the wall, you're adding an extra step in there. You could have just fixed the dent, fixed the defect before you paint it, and then paint the wall and not have to deal with it later. So at the end, you deal with 2 trades in the old scenario or the traditional scenario versus us. We're trying to fix things along the way and minimize those. Sure, we still have damage that happens and we still have to bring people back, but we're doing that with all trades all the way through. I don't like to bring people back. because we missed something, or because we're asking them to do something that they could have done weeks or months or days ahead. So there's a lot of great contractors in the Phoenix Valley. I think maybe what makes us special is just who we are. I have a high standard for who I want to work with. I have a high standard for our in-house employees. I have a high standard for our subcontract employees, our subcontractors and trade partners that we bring on. I'm personally fourth generation in construction, and so I think I was just the way I was raised, and the things I was taught make a difference. But we genuinely care about our clients. We genuinely care about the designers and the trade partners on a project, and we try and make that evident in the way we interact with you. We're always going to do the best that we can no matter what. We're not going to cut corners trying to save money or expedite something. We're always going to do the right thing no matter what, no matter if it costs money, no matter if it hurts. And you're going to get the truth from us. So, the dishonesty or partial truths just don't fly with us. So, if something's going on, we're going to tell you. We're going to tell you if we have a problem and we don't know what the solution is. We're going to tell you if we have a problem and we've already come up with a solution. It doesn't really matter to us what the issue is. We're going to be honest, we're going to be transparent, we're going to be forthright, and we're going to do the best we can at every step along the way. One way that they can save money without cutting corners is slowing down at the beginning. It's exciting to get going, but a design team really needs a lot of information about how you're going to use the space, how you're going to function in the space, and really getting a good set of drawings together. I talk to people about different change and what change is good and what change is bad, and in a fundamental level, bad change, and change being like additional work, rework, things that cost money. Bad change is where you're redoing something or you're taking something out that was installed because it doesn't function or fit the way you need it to, or it's just not going to work. Good change is, hey, this will enhance the use of this space if we implement this. But nonetheless, it's more expensive to implement that the further along in a project you get. It's cheaper to implement it earlier. And that sounds pretty obvious, but a drawing on a computer is less expensive than something built in real life. And so getting information to the design team, really understanding how you want the space to be used and the operations needed, is going to save money, and then you're not cutting corners. So I would suggest people take the time on the front end, more time on the front end, to really design the space. And let's do less field directives and less change in the field, less change orders when we're building, because we've spent the time up front. We know what we're going to need and want. The owners that are really good at this are the ones that build very similar spaces time and time again. And they're very efficient in operations top to bottom, but from the construction side of things, that's the obvious one to us. So they know how they're going to use a space, they know what they need, they know adjacencies to other equipment or offices or people, and they're planning for that at the design level. They're not doing it in the field with weekly directives or daily directives. So that'll save a ton of money and a ton of time.